Hey everybody, today we're going to be doing a deep dive into intervals. Why? Because we want to be able to take those melodies that we have written in the previous lessons and be able to target very specifically how to get them to sound different and cool and unique ways. By the end of this, you'll be able to write out a sample story using just one motif that you've written before, but manipulating it using different intervals, using techniques like inversions, lots of really cool things. So, before we begin, one, I hope you have a melody. If you don't, watch this video. It's going to show you how to start creating a melody. And then we have another video over here that's going to show you how to identify the key of that melody. And then another video that's going to show you how to use modes and scales and keys to be able to start manipulating that melody in really cool ways. So in the last video, we ran into this really interesting phenomenon that happened when we listened to all the modes. And we found that some of those modes sounded happier than others, and some of them sounded sadder than others. So to give you an example, I'm going to pull up Reaper again, and here's an example of a happy mode. And here's an example of a sad mode. Right? They have a different flavor. And we want to figure out, well, why is that? Well, for now, I want you to remember four things. This will all make sense later. Just hold this in your head for now. One is perfect means stable, diminished sounds unstable, major sounds happy, and minor sounds sad. Again, perfect sounds stable, diminished sounds unstable, major sounds happy, and minor sounds sad. So, if you remember earlier on, we talked about whole steps and half steps. Now we're going to put those things on steroids. So when we first started, we know that the half step meant moving one spot on the chromatic scale. Again, if you haven't watched this video, you can find it here. So a half step is moving one spot. In this example, E to F or E to D sharp. A whole step is moving two spots. So C to D or C to A sharp. However, you can move anywhere. It just doesn't have to be limited to only those intervals. Theoretically, you can move from one space to any other space, which means there's more than two possibilities. So what I'm about to show you is going to be like a lot. Hold on, we'll break it down step by step, but I just want to show you all the possibilities there are first. So please do not be intimidated by this. In this first column here, where it says H, just bolded it. That's the amount of half steps we're moving. Then we have name. That's the proper intervallic name for the intervals, like depending on how far you move. And we're going to start with ascending, meaning we're just going to start going up. And really, actually, let's go descending too, because it's all the same. So you can ascend or descend these steps. And so what they're called is zero half steps, meaning you're not moving forward or backwards, is called a perfect first, more commonly known as unison. So in the example of A, that would be moving A to A. One half step is called a minor second. So A to A sharp if you're ascending, A to G sharp if you're descending. Two half steps, i.e. a whole step, is a major second. So that's A to B ascending, A to G descending. Three half steps is a minor third. So that's A to C ascending, A to F sharp descending. Four half steps is a major third, which is A to C sharp ascending, A to F descending. Five half steps is a perfect fourth, which is A to D, and then A to D ascending, A to E descending. Six half steps is a diminished fifth, which both ascending or descending is A to E flat. Seven half steps is a perfect fifth, so ascending is A to E, descending is A to D. Eight half steps is a minor sixth, so A to F ascending, A to C sharp descending. Nine half steps is a major sixth, which is A to F sharp ascending, A to C descending. 10 half steps is a minor seventh, which is A to G ascending, A to B descending. 11 half steps is a major seventh, which is A to G sharp ascending, A to A sharp descending, and then finally 12 half steps is a perfect eighth, more commonly known as an octave, which means if you're ascending, you're going A to the next highest A, or if you're descending, A to the next lowest A. All right, that was a lot. Let's take it one step at a time. So, if you remember when we learned about the C major scale, we know we started with the chromatic scale, and the chromatic scale is every note in Western music. From the chromatic scale, we chose C to be our tonic, our first note in that scale. And remember, a scale is made up of a tonic and a series of intervals. These intervals for the major scale is a whole step, a whole step, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, and a half step. This in turn gives you C, D, E, F, G, A, B to make up the C major scale. So what happens now if we move from C to the same C? Well, if you remember, C to C is 0 half steps. That's a perfect first. If we move from C to D, and then we look at that on the chromatic scale, that's 2 half steps, or a major second. C to E, then in the major scale is the next scale degree. If we go to the chromatic scale, we see it's 4 half steps, which is also called a major third. C to F is 5 half steps, or a perfect fourth, and it continues all the way to G, A, and B to give us a perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, back to a perfect eighth, or an octave. Awesome. So you'll notice, however, in the major scale, we have these two intervals which are really important to note. One is a major third, and the other is a perfect fifth. And the major scale is a happy, stable scale. So I'll play it, this little riff that I made. This was in the major scale, and you'll hear it sounds happy and stable. Right? Awesome. The major third and the perfect fifth in this instance is why when I sing do, re, mi, you know to sing fa, sol, la, ti, do. You know that. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's a major scale. And if you remember, a major third and a perfect fifth is major third is happy, perfect is stable. That major third and perfect fifth is what gives that mode its happy, stable sound. But it's not the only thing that has a major third and a perfect fifth. You know what else has a major third and a perfect fifth? Your mom. Boom. Got him. Anyway, in all seriousness, the Lydian and Mixolydian modes also have a major third and a perfect fifth. Hence, they sound happy. Let's give them a listen. So, I'm pulling up Reaper again. Here is the Ionian, the one we just listened to. And the Lydian is number 4. Here's what this sounds like. And here's the Mixolydian. Here's what this sounds like. Right? And actually, let's do it with parallel modes just so we can keep the tonic the same. So here's Ionian. And Lydian. And Mixolydian. Right? They all have a hint of happiness in them. Now, they have a different flavor of it, but they're all happy and stable sounding. So, the reason why, again, is they both have, in the key of C, the instance is E. But if it was another tonic, that would still be a major third away. So they have a major third and a perfect fifth for Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. Well, what about a minor third? If we remember, the Ionian being the major scale has a major third, but the Aeolian, which is the minor scale, has a flat E, or a flat third compared to the major scale. So what that means is if it's flat, then instead of it being 4 half steps away, it's now 3 half steps. And that would mean that instead of it being a major third, it becomes a minor third. Again, major third, 4 half steps, minor third, 3 half steps. However, the perfect fifth remains the same. So, what that means is it has a sadder tone to it. Here is the minor. Very clear. But it's also not the only mode that has a minor third and a perfect fifth. You know what else has a minor third and a perfect fifth? Your mama's mama. Boom, got him again. Anyway, for real, the Dorian and Phrygian modes also have a minor third and a perfect fifth. Hence, they sound sad. Let's give them a listen. So here's Dorian. And here's Phrygian. So they both, all three of them, sound sad. And look, Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian have that flat third, but they still have the perfect fifth. So they sound like sad and stable. So we went over the Ionian, the Lydian, the Mixolydian. Those are major, they sound happy. And we went over the Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, which are minor and sound sad. But there's still one more mode, and that's called the Locrian. Well, the Locrian is very interesting because it has a minor third, but also has a diminished fifth. So we know that major sounds happy, perfect sounds stable, minor sounds sad, but diminished, remember, sounds unstable. So that minor third and diminished fifth is what makes the Locrian sound the sad and unstable. Here's what it sounds like. Whew. Totally different compared to the other ones. That diminished fifth really stands out. So, as far as modes go, you know what else is sad and unstable? Your grandmama's mama. All right, I'm done. By the way, that was a Wild 9 reference, so if you've not played that game, stop this tutorial, go play it. It's freaking awesome. Anyway, but there is no other mode, at least in this scale, the major scale, again, these are all modes of the major scale, that has that diminished fifth in it. So we've covered all 7. We know that the Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian are major, the Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian are minor, and the Locrian is diminished. So how does this tie into melodies? Well, one, now you can identify the key of your melody and therefore the intervals, so you can mess with them, right? In the last video, we learned about that melody that you created, how to know what key it's in. And so from there, you can know what the scale is. And so you can say, oh, I'm in this scale, so it has these intervals in it. And now I can say, well, if I'm in a major scale, and I want it to sound sadder, maybe I can drop this minor third, like the major third to a minor third. Or maybe I can even mess with the sixth and turn the major sixth into a minor sixth, or maybe even make the fifth diminish and see what happens. That's the first thing. The second thing, which is really cool, is you can invert the intervals. So invert, yeah, every interval has a mirrored equivalent that's worth experimenting with. So let's break it down. So let's take example, the minor second. From ascending minor second, you get A to A sharp, but descending, you get A to G sharp. But what's interesting is if you go to a major seventh, if you ascend, you get A to G sharp, and descending, you get A to A sharp, meaning they wind you up in similar areas. Let's try another example. Let's take the major third and the minor sixth. The major third ascending gets you A to C sharp, but a descending minor sixth also gets you A to C sharp. Likewise, a descending major third gets you A to F, and an ascending minor sixth gets you A to F as well. And perfects are inversions too. A perfect fourth ascending will get you A to D, where a perfect fifth descending will get you A to D. A perfect fourth descending will get you A to E, and a perfect fifth ascending will get you A to E. And then a diminished fifth, it's a mirror of itself. Ascending, descending both get you A to E flat. Now, you may have recognized a pattern here because when it comes to inverted intervals, perfects and diminished stay the same. Like a perfect fourth becomes a perfect fifth and vice versa. And the diminished fifth just remains a diminished fifth. However, majors and minors switch. So like that major seventh becomes a minor second, and a major third becomes a minor sixth. Lastly, everything adds to 9, which is like a quick way to think about an inversion. So if you know you want to invert a fourth, well, the inverted version of that fourth is going to be a fifth of some sort, right? So be like 4 plus 5 is 9. A third is going to be a sixth. 3 plus 6 is 9, right? So I know if I want to invert a perfect fifth, 9 minus 5 is 4. It keeps perfect because it's perfect. Perfects don't switch. If I want to invert a second, well, 9 minus 2 is 7. And if it's a minor second, I just switch it to major. So minor second inverts to a major seventh. It's like a quick way to remember it. Anyway, let's try taking the melody that we wrote and messing with it using what we know about intervals and inversions. So if you remember, we told a story by pulling up our mix sheet. And right, we wrote this little synopsis. And so what I did is I took one area of that and I said, okay, the party preps for war, so I'm just going to pick a motif that I think represents the party. And then they get anxious before the fight, so I want some instability and chaos. And then they battle, so maybe I want to somehow go back to the main motif. And then they almost lose, so they're sad and depressed. And then they win at the end, and woo, it's victory. All right, let's compose that. So let's take this little riff that I wrote here. This guy here. Cool. And let's compose a little song out of it. So I'm just going to drag it out. Now, if it's looping on you, you can go ahead and left click, go to item settings, and uncheck loop item source. That will mean that just stretches out forever. Cool. So here we go. I'm going to pull this over so we can see both these screens at the same time. So, party preps for war. Here we go. They're getting ready for war. This is a motif I want to go for. But you know what? It kind of sounds maybe a little too happy for war. So I'm just going to like maybe take this sixth and lower it. Like I still want that hope in the major third, but I don't want it to be as happy as it is. So cool. I'll lower this one too. Awesome. Cool. Party has now prepped to go to war and they get anxious before the fight. So I want this to feel kind of crazy. So let's try doing an inversion. Now, an inversion, let's actually do this in real time so you can see, isn't super duper crazy. All I'm going to do is I'm looking like, oh, cool, I have a major third here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the major third from the tonic. It was ascending. Now I'm going to descend that major third. Boom. That's it. All right. So here from the tonic of C, I have a perfect fifth, which means that I want a perfect fifth below C, which means it's going to be the perfect fourth variant, which is F. All right. I have another one there. Here's a perfect fourth because it's F from C, so I know it's going to be a perfect fifth on the lower octave. I have a major third, so I know this is going to be a minor third. So it's going to be A sharp, right? No, it's going to be A. I lie. And I'm just going to do this with every single one, right? This was here. This was a major sixth. I want to keep it at the original. So actually, no, it was a minor sixth. Let's drop this down to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sometimes I just have to count it out normally because I have a brain fart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's go 4, 5, 8. Oh, cool. And right. Go here. how that sounds. All right, that's a little low, so I'm just gonna boost that up an octave so it like leads better. Interesting. Okay. I'm not entirely sold on it, but could be cool. So let's go back to the main motif here. Boom. They almost lose, so let's do like a sad version of this motif, right? I'm gonna take this and, oh no, they're almost losing. So I'm just gonna take this third, I'm gonna drop it. And everything else is pretty minor here. And then, well, they win. They have victory at the end. Cool. There, and maybe I'll actually turn this back into happiness by sharpening those. All right, let's see what we have. Now, it's probably not going to be a finished product, but it should give us a really cool start to start, thinking about how we can really massage this and make it cool. Prepping for war, anxiety. They battle. They almost lose. And then they win. And we'll finish on a tonic. Do, Ray, we win. Good for us. If I can get it there. Cool. All right. So, a little lengthy, a little too repetitive for my taste, but check this out. We have a lot that we can work with, and we can just take little sections of these musical ideas and turn them into something cool. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes recomposing this to make it sound, better. I'll be right back. Cool. So I went through and I deleted a lot. I took some ideas and kind of massaged them into something new. And so this is what I have. Awesome. A little bit better, right? And so you hear all these different parts of the story that we're going through. So there's two more things I want to share with you before we wrap up. And that is the concept of atonality and neighboring tones, which I think is just going to be easier to show you on a mid. Neighboring and passing tones is what I mean. So atonality, if you remember in the previous lesson, we talked about modes and scales and then keys. And if you remember, keys give you a little more flexibility than modes and scales, because a key doesn't say you have to play these specific notes. In fact, a key just says as long as it's pulling back towards the tonic, you're still in key, which means you can use this broad concept called atonality. And what atonality means is we're playing things that are outside of a key or outside of a scale or a mode. So it could still be in key, but it's outside of a scale or a mode, okay? So if you look, two common forms of atonality are what are called neighboring tones and passing tones. A neighboring tone is essentially I'm taking a tone that's right next to one of the tones that are actually in a scale or mode, and I'm going from a pitch that's inside the scale, briefly outside, and back to that same pitch. Right here is an example of a neighboring tone. This guy right here. These two notes are within the scale or the mode I'm playing at the moment. This one is not, but it's neighboring. It just kind of jumps it, dips out, and it goes back in, and it sounds like this. Now, if I took that away, it probably wouldn't sound as cool. Right? I like that. It kind of gives you some tension and jumps you back in. Now, a passing tone is similar to a neighboring tone. The only difference is that instead of it going from one tone to the same tone, it goes from one tone to the next adjacent tone, up or down, in that scalar mode. And in this lick, here's what we have. Right? Now, it's kind of interrupted by this little flourish on the outside. So we just take those out, but it's still a passing tone. But let's hear it without. Now, if I took that away, maybe lowered it down here, it just sounds plainer, right? So again, we're using that atonality to bring a sense of tension to resolve. So quick little tutorial on atonality using passing tones and neighboring tones. Again, neighboring goes outside and jumps back to the same tone. Passing is just a tone that gets passed through on the way from one tone to a different one. Awesome. Let's get into homework because I threw a lot at you. So first of all, I want you to experiment with 3 melodies that you have. Use the tools that we just learned. So use intervals, use atonality, and use inversions to experiment with giving it a different feel. Then I want you to tell a story using one of your characters or events that's in your mix sheet, and just pick one motif or one melody that you learned and then use these tools to tell that entire story. Again, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just what I showed you right here. Again, refer to your mix sheet, and if you haven't downloaded the mix sheet, there is a link in the description below that will take you to the free course materials that has that mix sheet in there. Finally, I want you to start to think how the feel of that melody could change by imagining it being played with different instruments. So what would happen if I took this story and I play it with a flute versus a trumpet versus a trombone or some violins? Even I want you to start thinking now about how not just the pitch, but the texture and the color can change how it feels because all these elements tie together. Anyway, that's all that we have. I know this was a thick lesson, so thank you for sticking with it. And I will see you in the next lesson where we get into assigning what we have into motifs and leitmotifs. So, tying everything back to the story. So I'll see you then. Take care.